Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. Here we are with the brand new year ahead of us, and I want to help you as much as you possibly can to plan for the year that's in store for you. So, as is a regular thing, I have several different consultations that are available on special offer, all available through my astrological services page, which you will find linked above. And in terms of strategizing, you're likely in a position in the coming days where you're pondering over a revolutionary new idea to create positive change for the path ahead. And as you're beginning to work through the processes in the days leading up to the new moon and beyond the new moon, you're likely finding yourself, coming up against some resistance, as resistance is necessary for any creative project. If we had creativity that was boundless in nature, right? We would be starting one project, then another, and then another, and then another, over and over and over again, to the extent that ultimately we would never get anything done. Because you see, the mind is very creative in nature, but that is also something that can work to a disadvantage because the mind also creates things that tend to work against, well, its own plans and ideas. The mind only sees opportunity and a chance to seize upon that opportunity, but the mind doesn't always take into account the concept of the time scale that's going to be required for something to develop, and equally the structure that needs to come into place in order to build something. Now, somewhere in your life, in one area or another, you see an opportunity for change. Great. You need to let that aspect of the mind do what it needs to do. That's great. It comes up with ideas, but you also need to be able to, well, develop the concept of detachment, because it's only from a space of detachment in the coming days that you're going to have an idea of being able to see the scale of what it is that you're actually dealing with. If you don't allow yourself to at least have a little bit of time to go through that particular process, what you're likely going to find is a desire to stop something prior to it even getting off of the ground. Because as I said, the mind has a habit of working against itself, especially when the mind comes into contact with the emotions. Now, I'm not talking about the heart. The heart is something that's vastly different than the emotions. The heart is that concept of inner knowing, right? And quite often we get the concept of a heart centered approach confused with the concept of an emotional approach. And I'm not telling you you need to be some cold, detached, calculated person. I'm not saying that by any means whatsoever. Emotions are a natural part of our existence, but it's when we allow our emotions to kind of take over. That's when the mind takes the input of those emotions and it runs with it and it begins to create all sorts of constructs, ideas. And where you had a revolutionary idea, suddenly you've got a chaotic mind that's running rampant and either, going, well, that didn't work, let's move on to this idea, or that didn't work, let's move on to this idea, and jumping from one idea to another quicker than you can get started on it. Or you have a mind that just completely folds in on itself and gives up altogether. Now, Mercury and the moon are the two Vaisha planets. They're the merchant caste. So they are concerned with the concepts of exchange and interchange, just like the mind is. Mercury and the moon are two aspects of the mind that see information, take that information in, get rid of something, develop something else, and works with that process of interchange, much like a merchant will in that particular situation. But sometimes that level of exchange goes awry. And in the days leading up to the new moon and a couple of days beyond, you're likely going to find yourself in a position where you approach, as I was saying earlier, the concept of throwing in the towel. But you need to allow yourself to have patience to move past that particular stage of the process. Your ego is being challenged right now, but only to the extent that it relinquishes control, because you have to get into that space of facing that challenge to your ego and all of its ideas and the way that you think things should work, the way that you think things could work, and yes, even the way that you think things will work, because it's at the moment that you're actually able to let go of that detachment sets in. And when detachment sets in, that's when you can begin to settle upon a firmer plan. So you need to have the strength enough inside of yourself to let yourself stay centered. Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn are all transiting through Sravana Nakshatra. Sravana Nakshatra has as a constellation shape connected to it something that's called the bright navel. But the idea is being able to stay centered. Because with Sravana Nakshatra, we quite often see a multitude of paths, a multitude of directions that we can go in. And ultimately, with seeing that multitude of directions, we get exceptionally confused about which of those things to develop and which of those things to set aside. So if you have an idea that seems to go awry, don't give up there. Let yourself work through the process. Give yourself, a good several days the other side of the new moon, and allow yourself to accept that not everything is under your control. And on a certain level, that may not feel uplifting, but it is actually a good thing, because if something was within your control, you might actually make a decision that would botch it up. And I'm not saying that you want to botch it up, but again, back to square one. The mind has a way of doing that and getting in its own way. So, in order for you to stop the mind from running rampant, you need to give things a little more time. You need to recognize that an obstacle is not a dead end in every single case. And when it is a dead end, ultimately, you will know. That's going to do it for this look at Mercury's conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn in Sravana Nakshatra. If you could use a little bit of help with this particular alignment or anything in the days ahead, again, special offers are always available on my astrological services page, which you will find linked above. The transit of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury conjuncting in Sravana Nakshatra takes place from the 8th to the 14th of January. Until next time, everybody, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.